Don't waste your money on fall fashion trends. And I know what you're thinking when I said that, but how do I stay stylish? What if I look outdated? And I get it, because as a former shopaholic, I used to chase all the trends. But believe me, all that ever left me with was a closet full of clothes and nothing to wear, with a whole lot of money wasted. I think there is a better way to buy into trends, and in this video, I want to break down all the top fall fashion trends for 2025 that you're going to be seeing a lot in store and online that I think you should avoid buying. And I'm gonna break down what you can do instead. Starting with the first trend, lace. So lace is back. This is something that I've been seeing quite a lot lately on my feed, especially coming off of Copenhagen Fashion Week. All of the girlies are either layering with lace or kind of doing this lingerie dressing style. This is, I think, leaning back on the bohemian trend that we're coming off of in summer. We're really playing into romance, femininity, and just finding ways to soften up an outfit. But you know what this is actually reminding me of? This. Anybody else layer their tank tops in 2005? Raise your hand. The way I've been seeing lace layering styled, I've actually quite liked, but I'm gonna be skipping on this trend because it's just something that I think we've seen before, and I just don't think it's gonna have a whole lot of longevity. Now, don't get me wrong, because I do like the way that some of this, especially the layering, has been styled, but I'm going to be skipping it myself because it just doesn't align with my own personal taste or personal style. If you do like things that are more silky, soft, feminine, think things like slip dresses, nightgowns, lace, frills, then I think this trend will really suit your style. But I also think it's something that you don't need to buy new. This is something that can be easily found in the thrift store if you do want to take it on. But I think the way it's being layered like this in particular is going to be as fleeting as it was back in the early 2000s, which is why I think we can skip it. This next one I think we've seen before, and it's an example to me of how I feel like the fashion industry is really running out of ideas, because this is something that's been classic for literal decades, and that is utility jackets. So think your barn style jackets, your Barber jackets, Carhartt. It's that workwear sort of masculine aesthetic that has really taken off in the past few years. Although it's being marketed as a trend, and you're going to be seeing the silhouette quite a lot in stores and online on your favorite influencers, this trend is a classic. And this is something that you might be able to skip because you probably already own it, or someone in your family does. I think maybe all of our grandfathers owned a jacket like this. So this is something that I think you can easily thrift. You can get it off eBay, getting it secondhand if you do want to participate in this trend. But I think it is something that is so unbelievably classic that it's not really a trend at all. So I wouldn't feel pressure to buy into it just because everybody's wearing it right now. It's something that I think you need to think about whether or not it fits in with your aesthetic, and if you really want to play around with a more masculine, utilitarian workwear kind of style. That's where I think it's really going to work for you and have more longevity in your closet. Getting into some of the color trends of the season, I always have a hard time following color trends because it really is so personal and it just depends. Plus the color for fall and whatever season it is pretty much the same deal every single year. In fall and winter, we're dealing with more earth tones, jewel tones, darker, richer tones, whereas in summer and spring, it's brights, it's pastels, it's light, soft colors. Same thing this year. The colors that you're going to be seeing a lot more of this fall are things like Merlot red, so your burgundies, a moss or olive green, brown, and a new one that I'm seeing around is this really rich, almost royal purple. So you're going to be seeing these colors quite often at the store, but I've always had the same stance on color trends. If you like the color and it suits your palette and it suits your wardrobe, go for it. And if you don't and it doesn't, pass. Because guess what? Next season, it's gonna be something else. And the thing about color trends too is that they're so obvious for the season that if you do buy into it, next season, you'll still be on trend because they're just the colors that make sense for that time of year. There's no need to be chasing a new shade of something if you already have it. Next, let's talk about shoes. And this is something that I think you're going to be seeing quite a lot this fall. That seems like it's rolling off the back of the kind of yacht core and deck shoe trend that we saw this past summer. And that is brogues, and oxfords. And I find this really funny because for the last few years, loafers have really been trending. First, we started with a chunky loafer, then we got a little more slim and classic, then we played around with the penny loafer, the scrunched loafer. And the challenge when it comes to trends is, the goalpost has to constantly be moving. So if you bought into the loafers, now all of a sudden they're not going to be good enough anymore and you got to go for the brogue or the oxford. Now the laces are the cool thing. This is a trend I think you can completely skip, especially if you already own something like a deck shoe or a loafer already. It already gives off the same vibe, so I don't think you're going to be missing out on any style points by having a loafer versus an oxford shoe. But if your style does lean more classic, more academia, or even more menswear, then I also think that buying into this trend wouldn't be a mistake because they're such a classic shoe that they're going to be around forever. This next trend you've probably seen for quite a few years now, and it's going to be continuing into fall and winter 2025, and that is sporty chic. So think your track pants, running shoes, fanny packs, and track jackets. I don't actually think sporty or athleisure dressing is going to go anywhere anytime soon. I think that there's always going to be a craving for a bit of casual comfort when it comes to getting dressed, and the way that this is being styled I think is actually quite a lot of fun. I'm seeing it styled a lot with like a pair of track pants, but being contrasted with a really structured button down, blazer, a really nice bag, or things like a more chunky, luxurious, oversized knit. So I think if you're going to play around with this trend, using it as a form of contrast can feel quite fun and modern. I already own a lot of pieces in this trend because it actually fits one of my style words, which is sporty. So I was more than happy to kind of buy into it. But the pieces that I own in my wardrobe are things that I plan on wearing well after, Vogue is no longer talking about it. And I think that really is the key. If something is trendy now that you really like, if you're going to buy into it, see how it aligns with your style and with how you want to feel in getting dressed. And this is something that I find so easy to just dip your toe into if you're curious about it. Try pairing a button-down shirt with your leggings or throwing on a pair of sneakers where you would otherwise put on a pair of ballet flats. I think the key here with this style is playing around with that high and low and contrast. And when you start thinking about getting dressed and the pieces in your closet from that perspective, rather than just the piece itself or the trend itself, that's when I think getting dressed gets a whole lot easier. This next trend I think has actually been around for the past few years, but we've been seeing it creep onto different pieces of clothing and accessories, and that is just having a bit of hardware. I think a few years ago we saw it in the Tiffany cuff and bracelet, and now I'm seeing it coming out quite a lot in this almost like pierce detail. So we've got things like these Tory Burch pierced mules that are quite popular, seeing tops like this with a piercing through the shoulder or the sleeve just to add that little bit of glam and detail. I actually quite like this trend. I think it's a nice detail. It's interesting. I haven't really seen it done like this before, which I find quite intriguing. These Tory Burch mules are actually on my wish list right now, so we'll see. We're gonna let that marinate for a little bit. And I think, you could buy into this trend. You could also DIY it, I think, fairly easily, or you can participate in it with things you already own if you do already own things like jewelry, bangles, bracelets, or even the studded belt. I think the key is to add a little bit of shine somewhere, and that way you can kind of really be on trend without necessarily having to buy a new piece to participate. So if you do like a trend or you want to buy one, I don't think that's bad at all. I just think it's more about what is this trend adding to the outfit, to my overall wardrobe, and how is it that I'm styling these things in a different way to feel more updated, modern, and current, and in a way that actually complements the style I have now. Here's another fall trend that is a fall trend every single year, and every single year it's packaged as something that's groundbreaking and new, and that is fringe. Like, come on. I don't even have anything to say about it. Fringe has been around forever. It has always kind of been associated with like suede and leather and fall, at least for me when I think of fringe. So instead of seeing the fringe on your more typical pieces like a jacket, you're gonna see it now on the actual pieces themselves, like tops, tank tops, maxi skirts, and dresses. So pieces like this, where the fringe is really the focal point of the piece rather than being an accent. I don't know how practical this is, but I do think it it looks really cool and is a nice way to play with texture and depth in an outfit. So I think if that's what you're going for with this, then I think it is quite cool. And if you have more of a bohemian, eclectic, or maximalist type of style, then I think this is something that would complement your wardrobe really well. But I'm just saying that you don't need to buy this as a trend now because it literally comes back every single year. Next, we've got volume dressing, especially in suiting. Every single year we do see some sort of power suit come out, whether it be pinstripe, minimalist, color. Now we're kind of getting into that more sculptural, bold silhouette when it comes to suiting especially. So think things like really exaggerated shoulder pads, cinched waists, and barrel silhouettes. And I will admit, I already own a few blazers that either have an exaggerated shoulder pad or that kind of cinched silhouette because it has been around for the past few years. And I love it because when I think about buying something like this for my closet, I'm now thinking about it more from the perspective of what shape is this creating for me? What interest is this creating for me? And what sculpture does this offer that my other basics don't? I try to think about it as like, what is this shape offering me? What is this doing that like a classic straight leg or wide leg isn't, or that a classic tailored blazer might not offer? And thinking about it that way, thinking about it more as how these shapes can be used as tools in your closet when you're styling outfits, just helps it become less about the trend itself and more about the piece and how it is working dynamically in your wardrobe and in your outfit. But some people hate these, and if you do, then pass. And if you're on the fence about buying into a silhouette like this, then there's plenty of ways that you can do it DIY, like using belts to cinch in the waist with your blazers, your dresses, things like that. I think there's plenty of other ways to create shape in your outfit using the clothes you already have that still feels creative and cool. I haven't seen too many people talk about this, but I did see a creator mention it on TikTok, and I really do agree with her because it's something that I've been seeing quite a lot, especially online, and it is these more long handle bags. So I think for the past few years, we've seen, the resurgence of the mini bag, like the ones that are almost useless where you can't fit anything. Then we went a bit more maximalist and the hobo bag, the oversized bag became really popular. Then we had the Birkin, the Row Margot. And now I feel like we're getting to somewhere in the middle, something that still is classic, but also usable. And this almost reminds me of basically a long clutch, but with handles. That way it's actually practical and usable for everyday wear, but it's still quite minimal, chic, and polished if you are looking for that vibe. So let me know if you're noticing this too, but this is just the bag silhouette that I've been seeing quite a bit of. If you are looking for a bag in your wardrobe, I think you wouldn't go wrong buying something like this because it does look fairly classic and also quite practical to me. But if you have a lot of bags in your wardrobe, if there's bags that you love, then just keep wearing those. Or thrift something like this. Or DIY it, buy a clutch and then put some straps on it, or get your cobbler to do that. The thing about bags I find is like very personal, and bags and accessories tend to trend just as much as clothing does. So this is something that, if you miss it, you miss it. I don't think you were missing out on much. But if you did buy into it, it's probably classic enough that it wouldn't really clock as a trend either. But I'm gonna be skipping it because I have a lot of bags, I'm good. And just like colors seem to trend with every season, so do prints. And last year it was leopard print, and this season I think you're going to be seeing a lot of cow print, zebra print, and tiger print. So basically anything not leopard, just to make us feel outdated. I'm skipping this trend because I don't really wear prints at all, even when it comes to animal prints, quite frankly. Maybe snake sometimes, but when it comes to prints, get the ones you like. They're fun, they add some texture, they add some flair, they're eclectic, they're cool. It doesn't matter what it is, enjoy it. So now you know the top fall fashion trends that you don't really need to buy if they don't go with your forever wardrobe. But if you do want to know the classic pieces that I think will never go out of style, you can watch that video here next. Thanks for watching. Let me know what trends you're going to be buying and the ones you're going to be skipping, and I'll see you next week. Bye.